following podcast is for informational purposes only. The contents of this podcast do not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Take responsibility for your own decisions, consult with the proper professionals, and do your own research.
And the graph, it just simplifies being able to query data. And also with its network, it's able to just scale and match the current demand of Solana's high throughput and extreme amount of transactions.
GRTiQ podcast.
We are like astronauts floating in the space of time. Just between past and future.
That is the sound of inevitable.
Welcome to the GRTiQ podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Brianna Migliaccio. At Solana, Brianna works to empower developers, helping teams leverage Solana's speed and scalability. Her role involves a range of important contributions, from creating developer resources to bootcamps to practical guides, all in an effort to unlock decentralized applications on Solana. With degrees in mechanical engineering and nuclear physics from NYU, Brianna brings a unique technical perspective to blockchain development. Journey began at Accenture as a consultant, where she discovered her passion for software engineering before transitioning to Web3 via Delphi Digital, where she developed smart contracts in the Cosmos ecosystem. In our conversation, Brianna shares insights into the evolution of blockchain technology, Solana's growing developer ecosystem, and the importance of user-friendly tools for driving greater Web3 adoption. She also discusses the development of new validator clients like FireDancer, improvements in blockchain infra, and her excitement about seeing more Web3 applications implement familiar Web2 interfaces to drive greater adoption. I started the conversation with Brianna by talking about her upbringing in Philadelphia and her early interest in STEM fields.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I was born and raised there and stayed there up until college when I moved to New York. So not much outside of Philly for me.
Talk about what you decided to do in college. And I've had a couple engineers on the podcast before, but you studied mechanical engineering and got a minor in nuclear physics at NYU. Talk to us about the decision you made about studying those two fields.
Growing up, I always liked things in the STEM field. My high school actually had a STEM program, and I took as many classes as possible in the STEM program. So I wanted to continue that in college. I just really liked building things and figuring out like how they were made and how to make them better, which is why I went into mechanical engineering, because you got to build a lot of hands-on stuff in college. And yeah, I just loved the idea of solving problems. So
what about this relationship between nuclear physics and mechanical engineering? Is there a straight line there where it would make sense to somebody, or was this a little bit of a stretch?
I went in with just mechanical engineering, and mechanical engineering is actually very much physics based. So I focused a lot on physics and liked it. And I realized that nuclear physics is the basic laws of physics just change once you get to a subatomic level. And I just wanted to learn more about it. Like I didn't know why. And, that kind of grounds how the nature of reality works in a sense. So I just wanted to learn about it. And I thought it was really interesting.
How did an education in some technical fields, I mean, these are pretty heady stuff here. How did that shape your approach to technology and career? Did it give you a lens by which you sort of saw the world and what you could do from a career perspective?
I think like it opened up a lot of possibilities, because once you learn how to learn something in engineering, you can kind of learn anything after that. I just wanted to see what problems I wanted to solve, and solving problems is what's really interesting to me and makes I'm passionate about it. So yeah, being in a very technical undergrad major just made me want to constantly solve problems. So
in anticipation of this interview, we talked a little bit beforehand to get a little information and do some research. And you talked about in college, you were sort of envisioning working on rockets, but it didn't actually come to pass. Tell us about that.
I always thought it was really interesting. I love space. I am just curious what's out there and always have been. And I wanted the ability to research it. And I thought it was really cool. For my senior design project, I built BB-8 from Star Wars, like the robot, but a life-size version. And it was really interesting to put all the pieces together and code it to make it move and just design it and figure out how to optimize it. And I just liked building things, and being able to build a rocket and see it go into space was really interesting to me.
We're talking today because you're at Solana and you're working in tech. So you're not working on rockets per se. What changed?
I think that, you want to look at your whole life outside of work as well. And if you want to go into a mechanical engineering field, you do typically have to move to a different location. And I was born and raised in Philly, and I live in New York, and I didn't want to move anywhere else. I like living in the Northeast in more of a city environment. And that just came with having to make a career change. It was more of like a lifestyle decision.
I want to get your opinion on a couple of things, given your background and some of the interests you've shared so far. So the first thing is, when I think about like humanity and huge achievements that sort of shift, I guess, the trajectory of humanity and what's possible. I mean, I think about the printing press personally. I just think that reshaped everything. I actually think AI and what we're sort of seeing emerge there is one of those things. But most recently, that SpaceX rocket, when I saw that SpaceX was able to launch a rocket and then park it on that pedestal or whatever you would call that, I don't know the technical term, that seemed like a quake moment for humanity. Did you see it the same way?
Yeah, it was really cool. So SpaceX actually has like a special place in my heart. When I was in college, we did a lot of work for SpaceX just for their Hyperloop research. So I've always been a huge Elon Musk fan and all of his initiatives that he's making with SpaceX. So seeing that was really exciting for me on a personal level. It's an amazing accomplishment. Like it enables the ability to have reusable rockets, which just speeds up the whole advancement of space exploration. So it's a way to make the industry just more like iterative and being able to launch into space more often. And it's also the control and the precision that's needed to be able to accomplish that. It just shows like how insane the technology has improved in such a short period of time. So very exciting.
Yeah, I agree. It was so exciting. And so I guess the second question is, and for listeners, we're recording this in December and you're joining me from the East Coast in the United States. There's been a lot of talk about what's happening in the skies in the East Coast with these drones, and the government has really sort of fouled up, it seems to me, all the communication around this. Given, your background and sort of your interest in rockets and what's out there, how do you make sense of all that's going on back there right now?
I don't know. I mean, there's always people that are going to be building stuff and flying it around. So it's hard to know like where it comes from and who's doing the research. And yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot that's up in the air. So,
well, maybe by the time this episode releases, we'll have sort of answers to those questions, but I'm intrigued by it. And I'm mostly intrigued in like the gaffe of the government and how trying to communicate this and manage it. Let's return back to your story then. So we talked a little bit about what you pursued in terms of degrees at university, talked about your interest in rockets, but deciding that that probably wasn't the venue or the path you were going to take, largely because of sort of lifestyle choices. So how did you get started professionally once you graduated?
Yeah, so I went into Accenture, a consulting firm. They're actually the one consulting firm that's very focused on tech in comparison to all the other consulting firms where they're more of like a management business consulting firm. So honestly, I didn't know much about consulting at the time. There was a lot of recruiters for consulting firms that would come to Tandon, which was the engineering school at NYU, and they were looking for a lot of engineers. And I saw there were job opportunities available in Philly and New York. So I just went for it, more for like the lifestyle choice. And I learned a lot while I was there. The one fun thing about consulting is you kind of get to do anything you want. We have at Accenture thousands of different clients. So you kind of pick what fits your skill set and what you're interested in and get to work on it.
When you think about the learnings from an experience like that, so as you said, a consultant gets a broad range of business problems to look at. What are some of the key insights you sort of learned about business, maybe generally, or management generally? Did you walk away from that experience in consulting with a big name firm like Accenture with sort of new insights on those things?
I mean, you see a lot about how big tech companies work and kind of what their, North Star is essentially. I was focused more on the tech end where I was picking up like small tech changes and infra changes in the business. So I would say for me, it was kind of more of a catalyst to switch to software engineering because kind of what happens at Accenture is they hire all the engineers and put them in one bucket just as engineers, period. So I would get staffed at a lot of software engineering roles, even though that wasn't my major from college. So I got to learn a lot like on the spot at the job and I ended up liking it a lot. So it kind of helped me move my career in that direction.
I had another guest on recently that said that engineering brain sort of primed the pump for being able to code. And I, as a non-technical person, wouldn't have sort of assumed that. But did you have that same experience, that background in mechanical engineering and those degrees fueled your ability to learn coding and get into software?
Yeah, it's all kind of the same thing. I mean, in mechanical engineering, most of the projects that I had to do were coding submissions. We used MATLAB, which was very different than your standing coding language. It's kind of more like a fancy calculator than a coding language, but it technically is a coding language and you would write coding scripts for your project submissions. But even like any machinery that you worked with, like I would use a lot of CNC machines and a water jet cutter and 3D printers and stuff like that. All of that involves writing code. You'll write like a G code and upload the file onto the equipment. So all of that together, like you are like writing code on a day-to-day basis. It's not really your typical front end, back end, full stack type of thing, but it's still the same mindset, in my opinion.
If we combine the learnings you had as a consultant, which, I would probably argue represents industry dynamics and top level sort of observations about businesses and trends, with this experience you had in learning software and getting a deep dive on the technical industry, if we married those two insights you have with this idea about AI and sort of how it arrived on the scene and how it's impacting coding and software engineering, how do you make sense of that? And what do you see sort of the changes being there?
Yeah, I think it's enabling a lot more than I would have ever imagined a few years ago. Like when I was first starting, not that AI wasn't a thing, but it couldn't help you with any coding. So now you could ask almost any AI model to make a basic front end website and they could do it and spit out the code for you. And it's insane the progress that we've made in just like a few years. So I'm excited to see how far that'll go in the future and what it will actually look like to build out technology, especially like AI's data sets are just getting larger every day and they're just constantly learning more. So it's really exciting to see what's going to happen in the near future.
Amazing. So if we go back then to your personal story, you're working at Accenture, you've got that incredibly strong university background. They've pulled you into the tech. You're working on some software stuff. At what point then on this journey do you become aware of crypto? And can you take us back in time and tell us what your first impressions were?
Yeah, it's an interesting transition. I had a friend who was also working at a consulting firm at the time and fell down the rabbit hole of crypto. I went to college with him and we were both engineering majors. And he just one day was like, hey, like, have you heard of this crypto thing? And I was like, what are you talking about? I did a little bit of research and understood like the basics of DeFi. It was right before DeFi summer. And it seemed interesting. I was still like a bit on the fence. And then I started looking into the actual code and like how smart contracts were built and the tech behind it. And I got really excited. And then that's when DeFi started to blow up. And I was spending more time like researching crypto and DeFi and what blockchain is than anything else. And I just figured it was time to make the jump. I got like excited seeing how there was this community of people building and helping each other just for fun. Like you don't really have that in a Web2 culture. You just have this like open source. People are sharing their code. They're contributing to other repositories. and you have everything like clearly stated in code. So you know exactly what you're interacting with when you interact with any application, which also doesn't really exist or doesn't exist at all in Web 2. So it was really exciting. And I just figured I was young and could make that jump and take the risk at the time. And I wanted to do it.
So you're working for a very serious company. Accenture's a serious, global consulting firm. You're doing important work. I would have thought that work at a serious company would have primed you to be very cynical of the things that were sort of emerging in blockchain and crypto. What I hear you saying is there were some things there that drew your interest or attention. So I guess that's my question. Did your time at Accenture and studying tech and software engineering prime you to sort of adopt or see the value in the emergence of crypto and blockchain?
Accenture is like more of a tech-focused consulting firm, and they do this thing where they have 6 initiatives every year that they want everyone at the company to focus on learning. And that year when I started, one of their 6 initiatives was actually blockchain. So they had courses that were pre-made at Accenture for blockchain, and they had a push to like learn blockchain and how to communicate it to our clients. So I was spending a lot of time on the blockchain courses from Accenture. However, those were big corporate Web 2 jargon blockchain things, which was interesting, but not really at the heart of what crypto is. So I kind of wanted to dig into it deeper on my own time, which is where I learned what, this open source decentralized community of crypto is. And it just got me excited. It made me think about like time when I was in college and everyone was like working together to build things and solve problems and had like a clear goal and was very passionate. And it brought the same energy and I wanted to be a part of it. So
amazing. So a very common question I ask on the podcast, longtime listeners already know this is coming, but when you try to make sense of the emergence of crypto and blockchain, how does your brain sort of frame that? And, some familiar framing are things like, oh, it's a revolution against the sins of Web 2, or no, it's an evolution of tech. This is just sort of what would happen. You would have Web 1, Web 2, and now Web 3, and it's better. Or maybe it's about something social or political or related to economics. How do you see the emergence of this?
I definitely think it's an evolution. I mean, you think back to when the internet first existed and it was just static HTML pages. And people were like, okay, I can read the newspaper on this like big computer in front of me, or I could just go pick up a piece of paper and read it. And they were like very skeptic of the internet. I think this is like the same thing. Like it's this new turning point where people are like, okay, like I can make a token, now what? So there's still so much to be built and be discovered. And some of the tech is just like not even comprehensible, like at this current point, just like it was back when the internet first created. It's exciting to see what's being built today, but it's very hard to pinpoint what it's going to look like in the future. I think that there's so many endless possibilities, and I'm just excited to be building and creating that.
So returning then again to your journey here, you become aware of crypto, you go down the rabbit hole. Accenture assigns out some curriculum where you're supposed to study blockchain, but you go even a step further and you've got some friends working on it. In 2021, then you make, I believe, the first formal move into the space and join Delphi Digital as a software engineer. What's the backstory there? And talk to us a little bit about that role.
Yeah, so it's actually where the friend that first introduced me to crypto was working. I saw that they had an open position and they were a very small startup at the time. So I actually DM'd the founder on Twitter because that's, what we do here in crypto, and was like, hey, like this is my experience. This is my current knowledge. I'm super excited to learn and I want to. And they kind of just took a chance and said, okay, like good luck, like see what you can do. And yeah, I just went into learning how to write code in Rust and write smart contracts and dove fully into the back end of building Web3 applications.
And that experience taught you, I'm on the right path. Like this is everything I hoped it would be. I'm so excited that like sort of my ideals about crypto and blockchain are real and true? Or did you have some sort of harsh awakening that, it's not always perfect, but this is still a thing I want to work on? Like, how was that transition?
It was chaotic, to say the least. Crypto is definitely volatile. And I left a very comfortable Web 2 company to just like learn and take a risk. And we were actually building on Terra originally. So a few months after starting is when the whole blockchain collapsed. So I definitely had some second guessing happening, but I was still very passionate about it and excited and decided to stick with it. And I'm very thankful that I did. A lot in the space has changed over the past 2-3 years, and it's just continuing to evolve. So, yeah.
What were sort of the key learnings or observations you made about the industry or sort of the technical work that you would be doing to present day that you derived from that first experience going full time in the industry?
Well, one is just learning Rust. It's not really a language you typically use outside of the blockchain world unless you're working on embedded systems. Learning this new coding language was really interesting. It has a high learning curve compared to other languages, but it's very robust. So as soon as you compile code, you kind of know if your code works or not, whereas like other languages, you don't. So that was a good skill set that I was excited to learn. Other than that, I would say mainly like the concept of smart contracts is very different than your typical like Web 2 developments. And just understanding like having the architecture behind decentralized systems and the importance of it. So it just shows like a different thought process in building applications and is exciting to see like what the future of that looks like. So yeah.
Smart contracts are conceptually somewhat easy to understand, but technically can be kind of difficult. When I think about like all the threads in Web3 and in crypto that people tend to focus on, of course, we got L1s, we got L2s, we got dApps, but do smart contracts get enough of the credit for being sort of that foundational component that makes the industry go, or am I overstating it even in the question?
That's a great question. I've never really like thought of it that way. I mean, you have a blockchain that's running and you want to be able to use it in some way. And it's like, how do you do it? Well, you have to write a smart contract. You wouldn't have decentralized applications if smart contracts didn't exist. So they are pretty fundamental to have like a use case behind any type of blockchain technology. So it's extremely important, especially as you want to expand use cases and like bring this into people's day-to-day lives. Like you're going to have to be writing smart contracts that's taking data and using that to interact with the blockchain.
When I get the chance to interview people like yourself that sort of pivoted into the industry, I find that their first touch point or the ecosystem they find themselves in sort of becomes an anchor to at least how they think about their career and the work they're going to do. And so you landed in the Cosmos ecosystem. Is it true for you? Did that shape a little bit of the way you think about L1s and the industry as a whole?
I would say yes and no. So at Delphi, it was not only a engineering company, but it was also a research firm. So the research firm was focusing on all L1s, L2s, any type of application in crypto, and doing a lot of like research on it and consulting with the different ecosystems. So I had exposure to that. And I guess I wasn't just only looking into Cosmos when I first started. I was definitely looking at several L1s, several L2s. How do I use these? However, I was building in Cosmos. So I would say like most of the applications that I knew at the time were Cosmos related because that's what I was building and the teams that I was working with. So it's kind of yes and kind of no, I'd say.
Makes sense. And so again, returning to your story, the next move you make from there is to why we're talking today. You're DevRel at Solana. So take us behind the scenes here. Talk about that transition and the backstory of sort of what prompted that move and why you decided to even make a move like that.
Building in Cosmos is really fun. It's a great community and a lot of extremely smart people that are fun to work with. However, it's this app chain thesis, which is very different than what Solana is. And building on an app chain is just a very different tech stack than building on an L1. And I wanted to just have exposure to a different tech stack and understand that as well. I think working in crypto, there's so much going on that the more that you can learn across like all chains is going to be very beneficial. So I looked into Solana. I really enjoyed kind of the community that was there, this clear vision that they had for all of the ecosystems that are building on Solana and everyone working together. And it's really exciting. And DevRel doesn't exist in Cosmos, mainly because with an app chain thesis, there's countless chains that exist. So the tech stack varies per chain that you're building on. And there's this like cross-chain concept where it just wouldn't make sense for them to have a DevRel. It's kind of all chain dependent on how you're building. So I thought DevRel was a really cool job. And I wanted to also have experience doing that as well. So I saw the job description, I saw the ecosystem, I thought it was really cool. So I just applied and yeah, here I am.
And when was that?
Almost a year ago now. Actually, exactly a year ago. It was December last year.
So you joined Solana at an amazing time, right? I feel like, and again, I have an outside observation or perspective, but it seems like since you joined, Solana has been on an incredible tear and there's so much enthusiasm within that community, so much share of voice within the industry. And it's been a lot of fun to watch. Talk to me about that experience then of joining an ecosystem that was sort of just getting ready to launch at the forefront of the industry.
It's crazy how fast things move. My very first day at Solana, not first day, maybe second week, but very early on, I went out to ETH Denver and I was working the booth at ETH Denver. And I had several people come up to the booth and say, "What's Solana?" And then not even a few months later, I was at another conference. I think it was Consensus. And people were coming up and being like, "Oh my gosh, Solana." Like, so it's crazy to see like how much can change in just a couple months in the industry. So that was really exciting to see. I think because of the time, it was a lot for DevRel. Like it was very exciting where you had this opportunity. A lot of developers were curious about the chain and trying to understand how to build on it. So you had a lot of different touch points, a lot of opportunity to kind of reach many developers in a short period of time. Yeah, that's exciting.
So without kind of saying one's better than the other and putting you in that awkward spot, I do want to sort of ask you about the different experiences of working in a Cosmos ecosystem and a Solana ecosystem from the perspective of like the devs and the community. So how is sort of your experience in Solana different or unique to what you've experienced before?
Both ecosystems have great technology, really amazing developers. I've worked with some insanely smart people over the past several years and I'm very thankful for it. I would say what's unique between the two is the different visions. You have Cosmos has an app chain thesis of this like sovereign chains and being able to build chain specific technology and customize your chain for your application. So you did a lot of work like at the Go level, the chain level, like running nodes and focusing on like your actual chain performance, where in Solana, like you're building on top of Solana. So it's focusing more on the Rust level and building applications. And you have everyone is building their apps on the Solana chain. So it's more people working together. It's kind of crazy to see. Sometimes I'll make a PR to a repo and then I'll have several issues commented and other people trying to make a PR. And you just have everyone very excited about things that are being built in the ecosystem where everyone just like wants to work together. And because, your application contributes to someone else's and we're building tooling that's going to help several applications improve like what they're building. It's just kind of this, everyone wants to push each other to just further advance Solana as a whole, which is like really exciting to be a part of.
Another somewhat awkward question, but I still want to ask it. It's this question about the narrative we sometimes see emerge on crypto Twitter and other places where Solana is getting pitted sort of against Ethereum. And there's data-driven rationale why that's an interesting question. And then there's all the hype and speculation that makes it maybe less of a serious question. But What's your perspective on that comparison, and sort of how are you tracking this constant sort of debate within the industry between Ethereum and Solana?
It's hard. You have two very successful chains that have made like groundbreaking technology in the future of crypto and blockchain. And I think you want to see all of them do well, right? Like if Ethereum does really well, it's just going to help Solana. And if Solana does really well, it's just going to help Ethereum. We're so early on in the future of Web3 and decentralized technology that any advancement in any chain is just going to lift anyone else up and bring more visibility to this crypto bubble that we have currently. I don't really look at it as a competition, but more of just, hey, like we're all building, we all want to see the same end goal. So like, let's keep doing it.
I have this question, again, as a non-technical person, about the proliferation of L1s and L2s. And I'm trying to sort of make sense of why this is happening and what the end game looks like. Is there just going to be endless L1s, L2s? Within the context of sort of that naivete, if you will, how would you sort of describe to a person like me what makes Solana unique and different in this sort of evolving landscape of L1s and competitive dynamics?
Yeah, I think Solana, because it has, it's fast and it's cheap, right? That's like our basic like catchphrase at this point. It enables a lot to be built directly on the L1, which is pretty unique. There are, of course, other L1s that are fast and cheap as well. But Solana, just you have FireDancer that's being built currently that's enabling 1 million TPS for a validator client. You have a lot of other teams that are working on like making the most optimal fast technology possible. And they're just constantly trying to break the status quo. It's being focused like directly on the L1, I would say, with Solana.
And as a DevRel, you get a front row seat to a lot of the things that the community is building and working on. And as I said at the beginning, it's been fun to see some of the projects that have emerged from the Solana ecosystem. Are there any now, and I don't want you to play favorites by any means, but are there any projects that you're sort of keeping an eye on that have got you and the community sort of excited of what's possible when building on Solana?
In the spirit of not playing favorites, I'm going to focus more on the tooling and tech side of things, just because that's my main focus. If we improve tooling, we improve more developers in the ecosystem, and then that enables more apps in the end. So we have a lot of great projects for tooling. We have like new buzz testers and code coverage tools coming out. We have a toolkit that's being worked on. We have new ways to simulate like local environments and how to update that to do better testing for all of your applications. And then just from the tech side of things, I mentioned FireDancer earlier, but that's when they continue building this client that enables 1 million TPS. It's just going to unlock so much that can be built on top of Solana. And then there's also a new company that just was announced, 00, and they're just focusing on improving the fiber layer of the internet. So if you think about if FireDancer accomplishes their main goal, the next roadblock is really going to be jitter and like the issue with the internet speed. So now we have 00 that's coming in and trying to preemptively help out with that roadblock just to enable the possibilities are endless in the future. So very exciting.
And Brianna, as you know, a lot of my listeners are enthusiastic about the graph. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is about all the cool things that are happening in terms of the graph offering enhanced support for devs building on Solana. What's your opinion sort of that development there? And as a DevRel building in Solana, how important is having robust indexing solutions available to devs?
Yeah, it's definitely extremely important. I mean, Solana, because it's high throughput, there's so many transactions per second, there's quite a lot of data to deal with consistently. So indexing the network is just a very important thing for developers. And the graph, it just simplifies being able to query data. And also with its network, it's able to just scale and match the current demand of Solana's high throughput and extreme amount of transactions. So it does make things a lot easier. We did a live stream actually with the graph where I wrote a smart contract and then they took that smart contract and used the graph to index all of the data of the instructions that we ran in the smart contract on chain. And the entire workshop itself, from running the smart contract, deploying it, running transactions against it, writing all of the code for the graph, and then being able to index it, was about an hour long. So it's super easy to use. If anyone listening wants to check it out, I think it's on YouTube. If not, it's on Solana's Twitch, but it's, very developer friendly. It makes the developer experience on Solana a lot better. So really excited to see just the future of that in general.
And I'll put a link in the show notes for any listeners who want to catch that. I'm aware of that workshop and it looked like it was well attended and people were super interested in it. So congrats to you and the team that supported it from the graph. Brianna, I just want to ask you sort of a couple final questions before we get to the GRTiQ 10, which are 10 fun questions I ask every guest of the podcast each week. The first one is, I think, one that you'll find a lot of fun. Tell us about what makes you optimistic about the future of the Solana ecosystem.
I'm just excited to see blockchain being put to real world use cases and just seeing it soon to be used by everybody. My favorite thing is to see Web3 applications that have like a Web2 front end. So it feels like you're just using a regular application, but it's actually running on a blockchain, and seeing all of these amazing teams that are building the ground level technology at Solana to just improve to be able to allow for these applications to be built. So really excited to see it. I think the future is going to come quick and it's going to be more than like we can think of at the moment. So.
And how about this question? Suppose we have a listener who is technical and does want to sort of get started on Solana and see what's possible. What are the best resources or the best ways to get started?
We have quite a lot. So we have, I would say the newest one that we just launched is a developer bootcamp. So it was actually created by myself and two other DevRel members on the team. And it's pretty much blockchain basics all the way to developing and deploying your own lending protocol, a simplified lending protocol, but it goes over, it's about 20 hours long and goes over pretty in depth, several applications to build. So I think that's a great way to get started. If not that method, we have several documentations and guides of just example projects that you can follow along. My favorite one to point people to is a CRUD app, because anytime you're building on any tech stack, a CRUD app, it's create, read, update, and delete. It's your basic functions for creating any application. If you learn how to do that on a blockchain and deploy it, you can pretty much make almost anything after that. So if you go to solana.com docs and look for the CRUD app guide, you can follow that. It goes through the back end, the front end, the deployment, everything you need. And then, you can go on from there.
And then before I ask you the GRTiQ 10, the final question I want to ask is about this phenomena that sort of occurred within the Solana ecosystem. So I was mentioning earlier, you joined at an amazing time as Solana really got a ton of thought leadership and a ton of following and dev support. One of the things of this cycle that sort of caught people by surprise is the emergence of, or reemergence, I guess, of meme coins. And a lot of that happened on Solana. And clearly, a lot of projects on Solana are doing very important things in a lot of real world applications. I could build a list just as an observer of those things, but this meme coin phenomenon was quite interesting to watch in parallel. How did you make sense of that? And what was sort of your experience of seeing that emerge in this cycle?
It's always fun to see what people build and what the community finds interesting. Everyone's going to have a different lens to look at blockchain, but I do think meme coins are very relatable. Everyone loves memes. It's a great way to onboard new people. Some of my friends that I've tried for quite some time to onboard into crypto, they just were never really into it. And then I showed them like some meme coin stuff and they immediately made a wallet. One of my friends, she has her wallet and she named it My Farm, and it's all of her animal meme coins, and she loves it. And now she's using that to use Jupiter and Radium, and she's on Dex Scanner every day. And so I think there's always interesting ways to onboard new people. And at the end of the day, like you want to find like relatable, enjoyable content. So it makes things fun. And there's a lot that can be built out of it in the future. So.
Well, Brianna, now I want to ask you the GRTiQ 10. As I said, these are 10 questions I ask each guest of the podcast every week. And I do it because I think it introduces listeners to new ideas, encourages them to try something different or to possibly achieve more in their own life. So, Brianna, are you ready for the GRTiQ 10?
I'm ready.
The GRTiQ 10.
This is the way.
10 questions for astronauts floating in space.
What book or article has had the most impact on your life?
So I read one recently called Subliminal. It talks about the power of your subconscious mind and how important it is to kind of focus on how your thoughts are formed. And it made me restructure a lot of how I thought about things. So I like that book a lot.
And how about this one? Is there a movie or a TV show that you would recommend everybody should watch?
I don't really watch TV. Everyone always says I live under a rock, so I can't really help with that one.
Not the first person to not be able to answer that question. Totally fine. But there is this question about music. If you could only listen to one music album for the rest of your life, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I would say it's one of Drake's first albums, his Take Care album.
What's the best advice someone's ever given to you?
This is actually from my STEM program teacher in high school. He said anything's possible if you have enough nerve. So always focus on that.
And Brianna, what's one thing you've learned in your life that you don't think most other people have learned or know quite yet?
I don't know. I don't think I know anything that other people don't know.
And how about this? What's the best life hack you've discovered for yourself?
I started meditating before I do deep work, and it helps me focus like significantly more. So I recommend that to anyone.
And then, Brianna, based on your own life experiences and observations, what's the one habit or characteristic that you think best explains why people find success in life?
Yeah, I think it's finding like what part of your work you're passionate about. Like having a passion in what you do on a day-to-day will always make you go the extra mile.
And then the final three questions are complete the sentence type questions. So the first one is, the thing that most excites me about the future of Web3 is?
True ownership over data and digital assets.
And how about this one? If you're on X or Twitter, whatever people call it, you should be following
me.
And then the final question, Brianna, complete the sentence. I'm happiest when?
I'm at the dog park with my dog.
The GRTiQ 10.
And I show you how deep the
Podcast.
Great answer. So, Brianna, thank you so much for joining the GRTiQ podcast. It was so much fun to get to know you. We worked hard to schedule this interview, and you were super patient and willing to sort of sacrifice some time, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you very much. And it was great to learn your backstory. I think it's inspiring for a lot of listeners to kind of learn how people evolved into the Web3 industry, and the work you're doing at Solana is super cool. If listeners want to stay in touch with you, follow the things you're working on, what's the best way for them to stay in touch?
I'm the most responsive on Twitter. So if you want to message me on Twitter, it's B_ my last name, Migliaccio.
This has been a production of the GRTiQ podcast. For more information, including detailed show notes, visit grtiq.com/podcast. That's grtiq.com/podcast.
Please consider contributing to this project and helping build the community by subscribing and leaving a review.
GRTiQ.
Podcast.